Hello, Gothic friends. This is Alice, and you're in Gothic Land. And we are going to go into episode number 2 of my video podcast called The Road to Self-Recognition. And in this video podcast number 2, where we're talking with Tugce Kutlu about midnight mass. So in this second episode, what we're going to be telling you is about the camera angles, how important they are in midnight mass. And we're also going to talk to you about grief, the different ways the grief are represented in the series. And we are going to start creating a little bit of awareness regarding what is it that we can learn from midnight mass. So in this episode 2 with Tugce Kutlu, we are going down the rabbit hole of midnight mass. So there we go, don't miss it. Okay, hello again. One more time, Tugce. Good evening for me, super good evening for you.
Good evening. Yes, super good evening to me because it's 9 o'clock in Turkey.
Right. And when are you going to have something to eat? I would like to know. Or have you had a little snack in between sessions?
Oh, I eat early. I eat around 6 every night. I'm kind of like a person who eats very, very early. So
do you have like an English timetable that you have your tea like at 5, 6, and then you have like a
I
little
kind
snack?
of do. I kind of do. Like, for example, I do my breakfast around, 8 or something. And then I have my lunch at 1. And then 6 p.m., there goes the, dinner. And, well, that's the timetable for Tugce.
Right. And then you don't snack or anything before going to bed?
No, I don't
No
snack.
food.
But
Oh,
I drink a lot of tea.
right. So somehow your tummy is full there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is great. Thank you very much for being again here in Alice in Gothic Land. Let's welcome you with our little banner.
Thank you for having me. As always, it's a pleasure, really.
Great. We were talking about midnight mass, and we were saying let's get our funny things here. That you love this one, really, don't you? You really like this one.
I love this one, really. I am. Look at me. I'm so like loving and affectionate in this. It doesn't look like I'm about to talk about grief and death.
No, but
It looks like I'm giving away kitchen recipes or something like that, food recipes.
yes, and then next you said, "Oh, the surprise!"
Yeah, but that would be a good program. Gothic Kitchen with Tugce and Alicia.
Hey, well, in
I
that
love it.
sense, we would have to get, Ali. Ali is someone in Sam's group. as well.
Ah.
Yeah, and she's writing. We'll have to talk to her at some point as well.
Oh,
She's
Gothic Cookbook. I
That's
know
right.
her. Yes,
Yes, she's
yes.
lovely as well. And I've been trying to help her out as well, spreading the voice, and so people buy
Yeah.
the book as well. The
She's
Gothic Cookbook.
amazing.
She's lovely.
I follow her on social media and she's really amazing.
She's
Definitely.
really,
Gothic book cookbook, guys.
yes,
Follow.
it's lovely. It looks fantastic. It's amazing the work she's doing. And that's another project that is crowdfunded actually. And because
Mm.
again, it's a lot of work, there's a lot of research, there's nothing like that out there. She was interviewed
Of
a
course.
few months ago, and I never went to tell her, but yes, it looks like we could be doing something like that and invite her next time. Cooking recipes,
It could be.
not a bad idea. Maybe we could connect that with midnight mass somehow, with the kind of diet that they follow.
Yeah, yeah, that would be that would be so good. I really wish that we could do that in like person. I mean, it's not possible, but I would try the Gothic dishes, and I'm like, yes, this is good. Yes, yes,
Hey,
like
well,
you're in some kind of show.
you never know. If one day
Never.
there's a writers retreat in Barcelona where
Yeah.
I get you all guys over here, and when we come free, we can all try all these
Woohoo!
recipes from Ali's book. So you never
Yes, Gothic recipes. I love
know.
it.
Is so interesting as well. So yes, people, a lot of research and a lot of things going on out there in the Gothic world and the Gothic and horror. I mean, you are an expert in horror, and now you are going to be teaching it. How lucky your
Yes.
students are going to be. I'm so lucky I met
Oh,
you.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's an honor.
You're
It's
too
an honor.
kind.
No, it's true. It's an honor to have you here, and it's an honor having people that are so passionate about grief, about death, about how can we help other people overcome all these fears. And today we're talking about Midnight Masses Part 2.
Mhm.
And you were saying, Tucci, that the Midnight Mass for you is about trauma, mortality versus immortality, this fear that we all have about dying. And it is so interesting that these series were made during pandemic times when precisely there's so much fear about
Yes.
dying that you were also saying the road to hell is paved with good intentions, just kind of summarizing all the ideas that you were
So
saying
true.
before. That is about love, it's about religion. Yeah, this love and death dichotomy as well is very interesting, and all the little stories that are webbed into the big thing that is, considering such a small island, we've got a lot of these elements there that intertwine. So we are going to go down now. How is this story told? And to do that, we're going to talk about the settings, but I'm just going to change the screen. I don't want to be going through all these slides again. Oh yeah, well, we need to show this one. We need to show this one. People, before we go ahead, we need support. There's a lot of work, exactly like that. Oh, you did that for me. You need, if you want to support us, you can go to this coffee page, our coffee page, with my coffee page, but where Tucci is going to get support, and we're going to be sending her money over there. Because yes, we have a professional, we have someone, we have an expert. In Analysing Gothic Land, we carrying on these interviews with professionals, and donations are so very welcome. And also to continue working, as we were saying, I was saying to Tuche, the things that Alice in Gothic Land is planning, all these things that I'm trying to do to help other people, but also because we're having fun. What is the purpose of life? We were saying before. Our purpose is to
Yeah.
have fun. It's fun to
Yeah,
learn.
to have fun and to learn more and to
Yeah,
maybe to help people learn more. I think
yeah.
it's important.
I think a lot of times you realize that when you're enjoying something so much, that's how you actually helping others, because there's the passion comes out. And when you're forcing it, it's not quite right. But when it's like this, that we're sharing our knowledge with other people, and then everybody different people will go, well, this resonates with me. So yes, that's how you're helping me. And sometimes we help without knowing that we're helping. So just to keep us going, then this is the page. But I'm not going to pest people anymore with this image because I also feel a bit, awkward. But but that is, we're talking about midnight mass, and we're going to go today. We're going to continue this session with this. This is how we closed the last program. So the
Yes.
multiple camera angles. Yes, but
Yes,
angle. I always think
very
this is
important. And also the shapes are important. You mentioned before in the previous part that it looks like a chessboard,
that's
the
right.
checkered floor. And I agree with you because this scene is a chess game between Paul and Riley. And it is so vital that we should acknowledge that. And you see this like huge space, and there are two exit red lights that some kind of like it's a kind of sign that there is a kind of danger in
I've not
this
thought of
moment.
that. No, I've not thought of that one. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's
Right.
a
Yeah.
like two red lights that just go exit, and it's kind of like it tells us that there is kind of danger in this zone, in this scene that we are seeing, and it's a sign of things to come actually. And there is this shape of like a kind of triangle, and
Mm,
triangle is very important in a lot of cultures, as you know, Celtic culture, and it's important in Scandinavia. And if you've seen Midsommar, you would know that the church is triangular. And
mm,
so triangle, or of course, is also important for Christianity because you know the Holy Trinity
that's
is
true. Number
important.
three. Yes, it's true.
Um,
Three
yeah,
and
there,
I'm not thought of the shape. Yes, I'm not thought of the shape. What does it mean really in, for example, in Islam, this shape, the pointed is just because it's pointing at God. Is
Yes, it's kind of like pointing at God and like the relationship between people and
mhm,
relationship with the God,
yeah.
upper like it goes up to the God and then between humans.
Mm-hmm.
So because the show is about human relationships, but also our relationship with God and several gods actually in this case in this series. And it's really very important, and it's a wide angle lens that is used. So Paul and Riley are opposite each other, and they're at the same height. No one is shown like bigger than the other. It's a kind of meeting of the equals in
Yeah.
this manner, because we see Paul as an approachable priest. He's the father Paul, but he's an approachable, easygoing kind of guy. He's relaxed, he's cool, modern.
Mm.
At least we think so, but actually he's a 90 or 80-year-old man who was bitten by a vampire. We later learn. But it's so interesting, this scene between them, that we learn a lot of things about Riley, and Paul calls bullshit on a lot of Riley's stuff.
Mm.
It's a kind of the moment of truth for Riley, that he faces his trauma, he faces his grief, which he has been postponing until now. I mean, he has been seeing the ghost of the girl for so many years, and but he never talked to anyone about it until you know until
Mm-hmm.
he comes to Crockett Island and finally starts telling people that he's not actually really well. And that's, I think, a vital point of the show,
Yeah, it's very,
Riley's challenge.
yeah, it's very important. Are you talking about how symmetrical these images as well? The
Mhm.
symmetry as well in them, but also
Suggestion.
look at the body language of the two characters most of the time.
Yeah.
Yes, like it's approachable. At the same time, we have this other middle chair there because someone there that didn't turn up,
Maybe it's
and
God.
or maybe it's one of us. It's kind of inviting
Ah, yeah,
there.
our presence is there.
Exactly.
Or
Yes.
maybe it's the ghost of the girl that he killed, and there is just this emptiness that that will always stay there between
Yeah.
them, between
Well,
his relationship with other people and God.
well, as you said before, these three, the magical number three, the Holy Trinity that is not there but is
Mhm.
there. You're right there. He could have been playing these subconsciously,
Of course.
uh, but maybe
Mike
he's
Flanagan does that a lot, actually. He plays with angles, he plays with mise en scene, and he plays with a lot of, like kind of camera movements
yes,
to show trauma and show relationships between characters.
yeah,
And in this case, there is an empty chair. That's true. I mean, why? There is
yeah.
absolutely no reason for there to be an empty chair. It makes that there is a gap there between them.
Yeah, yeah. There's another game that he does that I didn't put a picture here for, but he gets if you remember right, this when they are at the island at the beach and they find all these dead cats on the shore,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
the camera goes
It's a
round.
very terrible scene for me as a pet lover.
I
It's
know, it's such a thing that
terrible.
they plastic ones, but yeah, yeah, I've got two cats as well.
Thankfully, thankfully, uh,
But this
thankfully
camera
they
going
were real.
round, this camera going round the characters
Yeah.
almost like if you were on a fancy on a wheel. It was, what are they called now, the full fair, but round, so it's almost DC
Ah, yes,
round the
yes, yes,
building.
that's true.
And I
It's
think the purpose of that is just to give us all the different angles and different points of view, so you don't quite stick to one view, but you have multiple points of view of the same
points of view.
story. I think that's brilliant. I mean, it's not in this picture, but that is brilliant. And I think
Uh,
also
I
that's the
I love that. I love that
yeah,
in films, like when they use multiple vantage points, because then you see the story between through so many eyes that you
mhm,
kind of, it's like a puzzle. You
yes,
pick pieces from all the stories and all the vantage points, and you make your own story. You make your own narrative as a viewer, and that's important in stories, I think. And it gives you freedom. It's more democratic that way, because you have a say in the narrative as well.
yeah, that's right. Yes, no, it's very important how you can show more and say less kind of thing, which is also not just something that we use for books and in fiction, but also in the way that films and series are now made as well. And I think he's an expert on this. I mean, we didn't get that when it was with Blind Manor or with Hill House, but
Hill House.
yeah, but
But
I think
there's an episode of Hill House that was shot in one take. I
oh,
think
that's right.
it
Yeah, I
was the
think
fifth or sixth episode. I can't remember right now, but it was one take, and it was phenomenal. It was my favorite episode on the show, and it just doesn't stay at one time. I mean, it even goes through time,
yeah,
and goes back and forth. It's the funeral scene, actually. Very interestingly, it's Nell's funeral, and we are seeing Nell's funeral, and we are going back in time and seeing the Hill House, and that's we are going back from funeral house to the Hill House, and that's a brilliant, brilliant kind of cinema that
yeah.
I love talking about, and that's why I'm saying that he's a master. I mean, Mike Flanagan is going to be one of those people we'll talk about for many years.
I think so. I think so. And we kind of, you were saying before in the other interview, in the first part of this interview, this series, that we kind of lucky living at this time
Yes.
because we have access to him right now, and we're not
Yeah,
studying him in the future. We kind of lucky to be contemporaneous and to understand where he comes from and what he's trying to do.
exactly.
Yeah, you're right. No, these camera things are so clever. So yeah, the multiple camera angles we're saying that tell a story. And then when we keep going down this rabbit hole, what we find, oh, my GIF is not moving. It was moving in my presentation because I stopped it from the presentation. It was moving, but the whole thing was passing too fast.
But it was
And yeah, it
doing
was
this.
it was glitching. So exactly, this is the area now where you are more comfortable with, and it's
Yeah.
where you are the
Yeah.
expert.
How interesting it is that I'm comfortable with talking about death and grief. I'm like, I'm comfortable talking about this.
I'm a little bit
It's so
greedy,
great.
who cares? Somebody has
It makes me sound like a crazy person. Like I want to talk about death now.
But actually, we live in a moment historically that
Yeah.
psychologists are going doolally, trying to cover all this grief that's going around, and loss, and with the situation we live in, because people, we don't seem to believe that we're mortal. So all of a sudden, death is knocking our door, and it can come up anytime. Even young people, doesn't matter, the age. We're going back to almost like what happened in the Black Death, that it just got to everybody, and we're living like this second or third Black Death in modern times. So we need to talk about this. So we need people like you actually to help us out with our own thoughts and accepting that's the reality, and also to take precautions and to be careful, and to, okay, let's face it, don't get paranoid about it. But if we can help it, if we can avoid it, and if we can do certain things to not get caught by it, we have this invisible death. And if we go back to midnight mass, this grief can look very familiar to us as well, which is why I've selected these few
Yeah,
pictures.
four characters that are
Exactly.
grieving the most, definitely.
Yeah. And the people around them, I mean, we couldn't put everybody here, but they grief splashes everybody else in the series. So would you like
Yeah.
to go one by one, and then I can let you just do your thing, and how they
Of
live in their own
course.
grief
I
differently?
mean, um, to start with, I think I would like to talk about why these kinds of shows and why these kinds of things are being talked about right now. And
Okay.
it's really important. I think we talked about this before, but the in Millennium, we had the 9/11, which was very vital for our collective grief. And there was the death of Diana in 1997, which was another thing that was important. And then people started grieving openly and grieving out on the streets, grieving for Diana, grieving for 9/11 survivors or victims. And so it really changed us to a kind of like collective conscience and collective grieving. And of course, cinema, like people who are like movie filmmakers, they are living on this planet as well as us. So they are getting affected by all this trauma, and they are having their own traumas as well.
Yeah.
Because everybody is dealing with grief at one point in their lives. I mean, you will lose your grandmother, you will lose your grandfather, you will lose your parents, you will lose your siblings, and maybe a friend that you love so dearly. And everyone will face grief at one point in their lives, and we cannot escape that. That's not possible, because we are not living in Crockett Island and we are not vampires. So we
We're
are
not
gonna Maybe you are. I don't know. But I can say for myself, guys, that I'm not a vampire. Okay.
No, he is.
But I wish I was, so I could learn more about the world.
That's
And
the nice thing. I don't like the biting moment, but yeah, I give you the mortality side.
I mean, I want to be a vampire not because I crave blood, but because I crave knowledge. So if you, I mean, I was just looking at this new streaming service show called The Woman Across the Girl in the Window or something like that. It's a kind of show that is a parody of The Girl on the Train and The Woman in the Window. And I was watching that before we started talking, and she was saying something, and she was about to do something, and she said, no, it's not you, it's grief doing this. And I'm like, okay, grief again. I mean, people cannot stop talking about grief and death these days. I mean, but it was expected, as I said, because of the collective grief that we experienced, that it had to come out somehow. So it is coming out in shows. We talked about Hill House before, which is about addiction and grief. And we talked about Bly Manor, which is also about grief. And then we can see that Mike Flanagan has a problem with grief because he's once again talking about grief in this one. And it starts with grief. It starts with Riley on the top left, that we're seeing, that very handsome guy. He has a car crash and he kills a teenage girl, and he's just lost. I mean, he's obviously under the influence of alcohol, and also he just looks lost. He just cannot face that. He just looks at the girl and cannot face what he has done. He's just stuck there, stuck in that moment. And we later see him in prison, and he's still seeing the ghost of that girl. And that is his conscience not giving him the time of the day. It just like keeps pushing him, because grief keeps pushing him to face up to what he has done, and to kind of take reins and to deal with his grief, because he didn't just kill girl, he also killed his own life. He killed all of his career prospects. He killed every chance that he might get at a reasonable life. Now he's just branded as a killer. I mean, he's branded by society as a killer. So he's grieving his own life as well, because he now knows that things can't go back to what they were. So he goes back to the only place that he knows, his home, which is Crockett Island. But he doesn't have a clue what is going to happen to him there. I mean, if he only knew, maybe he wouldn't go back. But I don't know. Maybe he would, because he's such a self-sacrificing guy in the end. So
but he's also like he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's lost his purpose by accidentally killing this person. He's lost his purpose in life. And you were telling us about this now, and I was thinking again about the camera, how he plays with Riley all the time. Every time he sees this girl, there's this tilt of the camera, right?
Yeah.
We go in his position and we see her again, and she's looking at him like if she was the camera as well. It's fantastic how the camera.
A fantastic shot.
Yeah.
And it starts with the Dutch angle, which is a kind of angle that shows something is going wrong. Hitchcock uses it. He uses it a lot. Sometimes it's called an Hitchcock angle as well, because he uses it so much, and it goes like this and tilts to the girl's level. And we are now on the ground with her. And because Riley's life is the same as hers, it's just it's over. And he, at least he thinks so. At least
Mm.
he thinks so, until he comes to Crocodile Island and meets Aaron. Then he kind of has a kind of glimpse of hope, I think, that things might get better, but things does not they do not get better, they get kind of worse. And
Well, yeah.
yeah, he needs to sacrifice himself, and that's also a very interesting angle there on the
Mm.
boat. And it's kind of like camera is coming closer, and you're kind of nervous. You're asking yourself, like, is he going to hurt Aaron or not? You're
True.
inclining towards not, but you're not sure,
True.
because this is human nature, and you can never guess human nature. And but he just goes, I brought us here not because you cannot escape, but because I cannot. And you're like, oh my god, he's going to commit suicide. Oh my god. It's of course it's a traumatic moment for Aaron, grief, trauma.
Mhm.
And but he, whatever he did, he wouldn't be able to prove her that this is what happened to him. The only way for Aaron to believe him was for her to see that, oh
Yeah.
my god, this man just burst into flames in the sunlight.
Yeah.
And of course it's a horrific moment that she has to pedal back to the town and tell everyone about it. And
Yeah.
so we can start a little bit about talking about Erin. This is her grief, but also she has another kind of grief. She's also a domestic abuse survivor. That is
Mhm.
important. She's been through trauma, and she's also she loses a child through the series. She has a not even a miscarriage. It just baby disappears. I mean, you
Yes.
have no idea what happened because of the vampire blood that they keep drinking in the congregation. She loses the baby. It literally disappears into
Yeah.
thin air.
Yeah. It vanishes.
And
That's very, for me, that was really scary.
that's even worse. I mean, if you had a miscarriage, you would have something to grieve about. I mean, you
Correct.
would have some kind of tangible proof that, you could bury it, for example. I mean, you could do some kind of service for it, but it doesn't exist. Like, people are saying you've never been pregnant. Like, what? What?
This
Like,
is a very,
how?
yeah, this is a very, for me, that was a very important moment because, and I think, I'm not sure if that's done on purpose, but that's how I read it because of my personal situation. I had miscarriages and
Hmm.
between my two children, and one was an ectopic and I almost died, and the other
Oh,
one wasn't evolving. And there's a difference between a woman who loses a newborn child, that there's a child, as you said, to bury. But
yeah.
when this child doesn't even actually grow, and it's almost like a ghost, but you've had it there for a few days, hours, weeks, and it's not even formed as a human being because it didn't have a heartbeat, but you've had to go through surgery.
Yeah.
People say to you, and other women say to you, that's not the same as me losing my newborn child. When actually grief presents itself and pain and loss, it doesn't matter how big or let's say to someone, well, if you lose, your baby's died, it's not as important as my 20-year-old son dying. What are we saying here? For me, that was wonderful
Mm.
because her pain was not so much that she's lost a future child, she's not even known this child, but the fact that is invisibility, this invisibility that society creates about, I knew I was pregnant, because you don't see it there. You're not treating it as a human being. It was alive for me. It was kicking. And in my head, it had a future. So for me, the message there, I don't know if I really like that because of my personal situation, but I kind of hope that other women in my situation read that like that. And they can actually say, yes, it's not just happened to me. This invisibility happens. And there's where we find Gothic again. We find in that it was and now it isn't kind of a space, this gray area. So I think what happens to her there is more not just losing this baby, but the fact that people didn't believe her. The doctors didn't believe her. And there was no remains of hormonal baby having been there, which then at a psychological level, she probably was even thinking, have I made this up?
Have I imagined it?
The doctor with us said, no, I was listening to the heartbeat. He was there. But science says that there isn't anything there. There isn't anything. So, sorry, I just wanted to talk about that because it's something quite close to me.
It's important. I mean, I'm sorry for your losses, by the way, but it's really important that you contribute to the conversation because of your personal experience.
Yeah, it's something that I needs to. It's painful, and I have to kind of distance myself from the conversation while I'm talking about it, because if not, I will be in tears. And it doesn't matter that it's happened 10 years ago. It's still it's still there. It's something that keeps coming back. But that also is a moment in the series where she's more vulnerable as well. And then she has this wonderful conversation with Riley about life and death, which we can get to later. And that triggers, it made me almost cry when she was telling, I think my baby is, the purpose was that, and then she's going to be okay now. And I can see her, and she constructs this other parallel universe or world around her child. And that's how she finds peace. And and then for Riley, if for Riley is different, death is more about the neurons and about the connections. And then when you start switching off, how wonderful this way of accepting the disappearance of your own existence, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I have read a lot of grief research because of my own research on like grief in 21st century horror films. And a lot of the books that I've read talked about miscarriages. I mean, they had chapters on miscarriages. And they also talked about kind of what you talked about, that it was, society deemed it not so, not so important kind of grief as a like a full grown person, full grown child. But actually grief scholars don't agree with that, because it doesn't matter. You have the bond, you have something inside you, you have fears for it, you have dreams for it. I mean, you have everything. You have told a life for this little person. And it's really vital that we acknowledge that this kind of grief can also mean a lot of things, and it means a lot to the person. And it was William Warden who basically said a word that Professor Alpert once said: each person's grief is like no other person's grief. And this is I think the last part is the most important part. Each person's grief is like no other person's grief, because it all changes. I mean, it is all similar at the point, like Alpert says. It is also similar, but also very, very different from one another. We all grieve differently. For example, I mean, in my home, we had a very recent death. I lost as I said in the first part, I lost my grandmother to COVID 1 month ago. And well, each of us had different reactions. I mean, I was shocked because I talked to her at 6 p.m. and at 1 a.m. I heard my aunt say that my grandmother is dead. And I was like,
Wow.
what do you mean? What do you mean she died? And she was like, it was like 7 hours. And
Yes.
we talked like nothing was happening. And she had good health. She was telling me, but she says something which is very important. She said, this disease, I mean, my grandmother used to live with my aunt, her husband,
Mm-hmm.
and her son. So they all had COVID. And my grandmother said, they will survive. I will not make it
Oh,
through.
wow.
To be right. She turned out to be right, actually. And so after that, each person, yeah, she kind of knew. I mean, death has a weird way. It works in mysterious ways, just like life, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because we have and different ways of acknowledging this death, and my mother still talks about reacting in different ways. For
That's
example,
right.
I am burying myself in work, which is a kind of denial, not denial, but it's kind of a way to avoid thinking about it all the time. And my mother still talks about my grandmother in present tense as if she's still alive.
Well,
And my
so
brother doesn't talk at all. So everybody has their own kind of like grief reaction, which is fascinating to me because death and grief are fascinating. And while we're talking about grief, grief doesn't always come with death. And we can talk about Lisa in this
sure.
on the top right.
That's right.
There's Lisa, and she's in a wheelchair. She has been in a wheelchair because the town drunk crashes into her with a car. And since then, she just can't walk. And one of the first miracles that Father Paul does, is basically helping her get up and walk. And this is very important because up until this point, Lisa grieves the life she could have had
That's right.
if there wasn't this accident. She even goes to the trailer of the guy who crashed into her, and she says that she doesn't forgive him and she never will. And but later she forgives him, of course. But she's very angry. She's rageful, and she doesn't want to forgive. But because she's grieving, she's angry. As we talked before, there are, according to Kessler and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, there are 5 stages of grief. One is denial, and then after denial comes anger, and after anger comes, of course it doesn't have to be after, it can like go from one place to another, it can change altogether. But denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, they have to be present in grief, according to them, of course. And Lisa is not accepting at first. She's not accepting that this is the life she's going to lead now.
Yeah.
She's not. That's why she's angry. She's so angry. But by the end, she's one of the 3 survivors of the Crooked Island massacre. And while they're on a boat and the sun is rising, and it looks so beautiful, and then she says, I can't feel my legs, and she smiles. And that's
Yeah.
very important to me as a viewer and as a scholar. It's very important because it means that she's finally come face to face with the fact that this is her life now, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it is very important as a message also, because after the first episodes, the show was criticized for being anti-disability, and this end saves it, basically, that she's now okay with who she is, and it
Yeah.
doesn't change anything. She is who
No,
she is. She's still Lisa. It
that's
doesn't
right.
change anything, and that's really important. And then we have Mildred and Paul, our couple.
Oh,
As it
very
seems,
common.
spoiler alert, our couple. Um, but we said spoiler alert from the beginning, guys. Come on.
We did. That is there from the start.
Yeah, it turns out they were once an item. And Mildred has Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is a vicious disease. I have had three best friends whose grandmothers or grandfathers fought with Alzheimer's. So I am very familiar with experience. I mean, not familiar as a person who looked after them, but I'm very familiar in the sense that I know how hard it is for the person going through it, but also the people around them, their
True.
loved ones. Alzheimer's is a very, very vicious disease for your loved ones,
Yeah.
because you forget about them. Your
That's
memory
right.
just slips. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're the daughter, it doesn't matter if you're the love of their life, they will forget about you. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't take that personally.
Yeah.
And Mildred is slowly losing who she is, her identity. And Paul comes in just in the right time to bring the goblet of fire, basically,
Yeah.
to her, and he's breaking the sacrament to her on a basically a daily basis. And what he's giving her is actually vampire blood. And we are starting to notice that she's getting better. Mildred is getting better. She's remembering things, and she's starting to get younger as well. When I first watched the show, I said, like, why did they choose a young person? I mean, this is obviously makeup. Why
Yeah.
did they choose a young person to play an old woman? And then I understood why that was, because
Amazing.
you cannot de-age an old person, but you can make a young person seem old. And she gets old. She gets as young as her daughter, maybe even younger. And at that point, everyone is like, Sarah is a scientist. She's a doctor, and she's also that she doesn't go to church. She doesn't believe in anything, as long as we know. And she cannot believe what she's seeing. I mean, the moment where she's looking at the blood and the blood just bursts into flames because of the sunlight, it's just like she's okay, I'm skeptic. She's like, okay, I'm skeptic, but this is too far. This is just like blood boiling and just like
Yeah.
exploding in front of
That's
my own eyes.
that's very important, I think, what you just said there, because if it not been because Erin loses this baby and she can see with her own eyes what
Yeah.
this blood does, these two end up supporting each other precisely because they know that they're not mad and that
Yeah,
what's
they know,
happening
man.
is actually, yeah, it's actually real. So we have this science versus the supernatural there. Sorry that I interrupted, but yes,
No,
is
no, no. Yeah, that was a great interruption. And I think she says something like, "I would say that you were mad, but look at this now. Look at what
yeah,
I'm going to show you."
yeah,
And it was a fascinating moment between this really strong, independent, great woman. The show is also a very, very great show in terms of portrayals of women, I think,
yeah, that's true.
and also queer characters as well. I mean, Mike Flanagan has a queer character in every show. That's his basically his signature, and I love him for that because it's inclusion and it matters.
Yeah.
And also, uh, well, Sarah has not lost her mother, but also she has lost her mother. I mean,
Yes.
it's like Schrodinger's cat. The cat is alive and dead at the same time. And
Yeah.
because she's losing her memory, she's losing who she is. She's basically losing herself in Sarah's eyes, in front of Sarah's eyes. But
Yeah.
then she starts to remember stuff. And Sarah's grief turns out to be like, what am I going to grieve now? Like my mother was kind of dying, but now she's not. And what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Her
She's in
identity.
shock. She's in
Yeah.
shock.
Her role and
Definitely.
identity. Yeah, they going down as well. I think that's another character that there's a bit of sacrifice there. The scientist. Yeah, because
Yes, Sarah. Definitely. Big sacrifice. I
she when
mean,
she
she
realizes who she is, and then she doesn't want to be saved. She could be saved,
yeah,
but she doesn't want to be saved either.
she doesn't want to be saved because she doesn't want to live a life like that.
Yeah.
And because this is our life, and we should we can't decide how we live, but we should be able to decide how we go on living.
Yeah.
And in this earth, I mean, we can't choose to be born, but we can't choose to live. And
Yeah.
that's an important message in the film. Mildred also could be saved, but she
Yeah.
just no, she doesn't want to live like that.
No.
And Paul has this great image in his mind that they will all become vampires, sort of,
Oh no,
and
I don't know
they
what
will.
he's thinking in that sense. Really, what was he
I think
thinking? He's
I
too.
have no idea what he was thinking. I don't think he thought this through, because like
No,
what were they going to feed with all this time? Like you
exactly.
can't even go outside in the sunlight. Like what are you going to do? Stay inside forever? Like but
They
what
were,
is your
they,
plan?
yeah, they were cursed from the beginning. They were deemed to die, whatever,
Yeah,
because that was self-destruction, as you said, in a small town. I mean, the only thing you could do is get a boat. I mean, there was the boat thing in the water.
mhm.
So yeah, they had this intention of running away, didn't they?
Yeah,
And
they
that's what
had
destroyed. But then the plan didn't go down to plan,
down to
redundancy.
plane. Yeah. And
So
then he burned down the church, which is my favorite.
they're like,
He
oh my,
burned down his entire church, his own church, his own parish, into ashes. And I'm like, yes. I mean, yeah, not yes as in like destroying buildings, but because I hate Beverly so much.
oh my God, yeah,
I didn't want her to survive this entire thing. And but this show is about, because grief in the end is about love. You cannot grieve something if you do not love it. You have to love it to have lost it.
yeah,
And it's really important. And Paul is seeing the love of her life basically losing her identity in his very own eyes.
yeah.
He's just watching. It's a very sad moment. He's grieving. And after this angel thing, it crosses over over his mind that maybe he should take this monster to an island and basically live the life he was meant to live as a family this
Yeah,
time. And but it doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. Death doesn't work like that.
no, no,
And it takes him forever basically to understand that this is no way to live, and that he has done wrong, and it cost the whole town, basically.
The whole place.
One act,
Yeah.
yes, one act cost the lives of hundreds of people. And
Yeah. In a way, it's what we were saying in the first interview, in the first part, that that's exactly what cult groups do. When you see these suicidal
yeah,
actions, it's just that, isn't it? We all follow, no matter what. It goes out of control, and then people that have second thoughts, they can't go back. There's a bit of sort of everything, but by then it's too late. But the
yeah,
one thing that the show also, I'm thinking about it now as well, is the way all these characters are communicating their grief, and they communicate in their pains. And we have either very, very long conversations and dialogues, but in twos. You don't see groups of people chatting, apart from the mass, apart from
yeah,
the moment in church where he loses the plot. Sometimes people are going, what was it all about? But also, at no point, and I guess that this is going to need a no section in its own, this vampire thing or angel never says a word. The same as the ghost, the same as Riley's ghost. They do not say a word.
right,
They just there. This is so gothic because we are describing the other, but the
yeah,
other is not describing itself, only by its actions, and is not saying anything to us. We don't really know if this thing is even coherent.
yeah,
It's just an animal feeding. How does Paul manage to get this thing with him to the island if he was in Jerusalem? How the hell did he make it there? How did they communicate?
exactly.
There's something there that is like, okay, that's up to us to make up what. Well, if he's a vampire and we know about vampires, then it's telepathy. How
Yeah,
can they
I
talk to
mean,
each other?
even the fact that he brought it over, like, how did you bring it over? Like, wasn't anyone in the, like, airport, or if you came by ship, no one checked your luggage? Like, no one opened your luggage and looked at the vampire? Like, how did it go through X-ray? Like, what happened there?
He brought
Like,
this big trunk. He brought this big trunk, and I was thinking, is the thing inside this trunk? Has he got soil to sleep on it like Dracula?
yeah,
What
yeah,
is this trunk?
probably.
But we
Yeah.
never see this trunk, do we? Do we see anything
and
inside the
like
trunk?
and like what he did he say to him, like, say to this monster, like, please get in the trunk, kind sir, like, please, like,
No, and then
how did
in
that
the
happen?
in the church, how do you get in dressed like another priest with a cassock? And I'm like, oh, that's so creepy, man, so
That was so
creepy.
creepy, that was so creepy and so satanic. So satanic.
Yes, but I think that he deserves this monster, this character, this vampire needs its own space. But yeah,
Definitely, we will talk about this in another episode.
another episode, we're gonna prepare that very well if people really like us to go there too.
Yeah,
But for that, we need some support. So that's why we got this
yeah,
thing.
for support.
Support.
Check it out, guys. Sorry, this way.
That way. Yes, that way. Like that down there. But it's true
Down there.
that for me, communication as well is so important in anything. But in the Gothic, we see how all these entities are communicating, and how much of what we have there. Excuse me. At the end of the show, I always lose my voice. How there's these constructs of the other. We have us, we have
Yeah.
the other, but then this other in this series blends in with us, or is trying to blend in with us. But in the end, it can't happen. We always have to have this yin yang of the balance of good and evil, light, darkness. And even though the boundaries sometimes merge, they go back and they distance themselves, like these atoms that attract each other, but then
Yeah.
at the same time, they can be repelling each other. So I think in that sense also it's interesting all the communication or the lack of communication.
Yeah.
So we're getting to
Communication is
this.
important for grief as well. I mean, we talked about a little bit about the conversations, Aaron and Riley have, that
Yes.
that's very important for grief, because grief is something that you should voice out. If
Yes.
you sit by it, if you sit like and think about it by yourself, it can drive you crazy. It
Yes.
can make you do things that you will later regret. But if you share, and I think this is why films about grief and shows about grief are important, because they are encouraging us to share with
Hmm.
people, share more our pain, our suffering, our trauma, our grief. And if we share, it will get better. Really, it does get better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The
that would be
communication.
my last word. Communication is important.
Yeah, it's true. Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. So let's show the last slide as a summary kind of slide to create awareness among the people who are watching this, and also as a starting point for the next introduction for the next section or sections. So what are we doing with this series, or what have we done so far? And we can still go even deeper and down this rabbit hole. So we're creating awareness. Yes, we did agree at the start that we have, like at the beginning of the series, we have this phrase that someone says, I can't remember which character says, that the community is like a ghost. That's right at the beginning. So
Yeah,
we're already introduced to this idea. This community is a ghost. So something
the
needs to
ghost.
happen, because kind of the vampire thing shook things a bit, and
Shook
stopped.
things up.
Yeah, and then they stopped being such a ghost. But the fact that there's this reference, that's something that we could actually look more in depth.
Yeah,
Communities as
of course,
ghosts.
as a ghost.
Yeah. Then we also have Riley's lack of purpose. We talked about that briefly, but we could go more in depth about
Of
Riley
course.
and his life and his background and his relationship with his parents that we haven't really talked about, how he connects with his dad,
Sure.
and also the family and the relationship with the mom and the brother. Addiction is a big one, because we don't just have addiction to alcohol, but we have other addictions like addiction to life, even, or not dying, this blood
Not
addiction.
dying. Yeah.
So that's another
Our
thing we could.
addiction to immortality.
Yes. Not you and me, we cursed. We want to be immortal to be bloody.
Immortal to no more.
We're gonna make a t-shirt of that.
Yeah, I want to be immortal because I want to know more.
Hey, I'll do that.
That's
So
great.
then we've also got, you were saying that love and death, which is like a very, very traditional tandem that we find from medieval texts. Love and death, Romeo and Juliet, these kind of sacrificing yourself and people you love to be with the person that you love, and creating all these problems. That's an old topic. And in this case, we have the evil deeds, which is what you were saying before we started talking. We talked briefly about child loss and all that we could contribute
Yeah.
with different research. And you were saying as well that there's a lot of studies behind child loss and early stages.
Yeah.
The vampires and angel of the Lord, which is like so antagonistic that is even funny, but it has a lot of history as well. So these are like immortal topics in themselves. They will never stop talking about these things either.
Yeah.
Then Bev's self-righteousness is the other thing you were touching on.
Ha! Ah, Bev.
Smack the
I
woman,
mean,
then
even the hatred that I have for Bev shows how much of an actress Samantha Sloyan really is. I mean, she's
yeah,
phenomenal in this
yeah,
show.
it,
I can't stop talking about her on the show, because like she's off the charts,
yeah.
because you immediately hate her guts. You're like, when is this woman gonna die? Like,
Dude,
but she doesn't for quite a long time, guys. Spoiler alert.
then the surprise is that when she actually turns and embraces this monster as well.
Yeah.
So that's the like, whoa,
Because it's
when
an
she,
angel of the Lord.
yeah, it's just how to manipulate this information so it goes well with me. Yeah, we could talk about that for a long time too. Yeah.
Of course.
Alzheimer's and memory loss, very important for identity, as you were saying before. Religious Satanism, I mean, sometimes the extremes, yeah, what happens when the extremes are so extreme that they get together. People's blind beliefs is connected to the previous one. Philosophizing about life and death, we were saying that too. And people's interpretations as a sign of social illness, which we mentioned in the first part. So I think we've talked about all this. We're creating awareness, not just because this series, we love it, we enjoyed it, but I think it tells us a lot about what's going on in our societies still, things that are ancient that we're still carrying on with them. And I think that I would love to invite you again to
I would love
continue.
to be on the show.
It's great talking to you. Time flies. Eh? Good job we're looking at the timer, but time flies. But if people, if
Yeah,
you've liked
it really
this,
does.
it does, it flies. It really does, like a vampire.
It really does. Time flies like a vampire.
A
Yeah.
vampire. So I would like to ask people to support us in coffee in Alice Gothic Land 1402. That's the number I was given in coffee. Visit us there and support us, and then we can continue creating content that is not just a chat. Any chat is, there's a lot of research behind it. There's a passion. There's this thing of helping other people to overcome their own fears and their own greedy moments if we can. And at the same time as we're enjoying the show, shows are not just entertainment and books are not just entertainment. They help us. And there's cognitive science behind all these that tells, that they actually help us find tools to overcome our daily lives. So that's how you can follow Tugce as well. We have in Twitter and Instagram. And you're not on Facebook. You're
I'm
not
not
on
on
Facebook,
Facebook. Yes. I don't know
right?
why I'm not on Facebook.
You're in enough places
I
already.
use, if you follow me, you will know that I use Twitter as a kind of like to talk about horror movies mostly, because it's my area, and I talk about grief a little bit as well. And I use Instagram to post about things that I will do, symposiums and all that. I share information and I share photos because I'm also a photographer,
Mm-hmm.
and so you'll
What do
see
you think?
that if you follow me.
Yeah, it's great to see everything you do. I mean, that's what we encourage people to do. If you like someone, find someone, follow this person, because there's always interesting conversations going outside programs
Yeah.
and classes. So that's what we have to do. And well, I'm all over the place, so that's me. But people know
You have so much on your plate.
it's not healthy. I'm telling you, it's not healthy. But it's just that. It's just that when before people know you. So yeah, this is Alice in Gothic Land. And let's go back to these. Thank you very much.
Thank
We're
you.
going to be doing a next part. So we'll leave it for a couple of weeks to keep working on this stuff. But what do you think if we continue then with our Gothic elements, and
Would
then
be
we start?
great.
Okay, let's do all the Gothic elements in the series.
Spooky.
Yeah, because I think people still do not know. I keep getting this question, what is Gothic?
Gothic,
And
yeah.
there's a lot of people outside the academia that are attracted to the genre, they're attracted to the mode. They don't quite know what that is and what that looks like. And I think we can actually help them see these elements by looking into something that they've probably seen. So,
Exactly. And Gothic is very popular these days for
yes,
many various reasons, of course. It's very popular.
yes. Is the time to let people know what that can do for them as well, and just keep learning critical thinking, identity, and enjoying ourselves investigating, because the brain is an interesting thing, and we always
Use it.
have. Exactly, we need to use it and we need to keep investigating. So thank you very much, Tugce. We'll do
Thank
a next.
you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
So nice. See you very soon, and we come with more. So get ready. Get ready because we bring in the vampires and all the ghosts next. There we go.
Our vampires, angels. Next episode.
Next episode with the ghosty touch. Okay, Tugce. So take care.
Perfect.
See you very, very soon. See you in the next
See
one.
you, everyone.
Bye. Bye.